Okay, today I got a fun one for you. I'm going to do a quick recap of biblical history and talk about where each book is in biblical history so you can kind of reference it when you're reading it. You know what's going on. Quick side note, all of the dates are based on um, the lineage of the people in the Bible. So how old they were when they had a child, how old that child was when they had another child, so on and so forth. And the latter half of the Old Testament lines up with um, some ancient history that we know about, so we can kind of figure out these dates and then follow the lineage back and determine when all of these things happen. So that's where these dates come from. Getting started, Genesis, the book of Genesis takes us from creation to about 1500 BC. This is the time of Adam, Eve, Noah, the flood, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. Jacob becomes Israel. Joseph goes into Egypt. That's all in the book of Genesis. From there, you go into basically the time of Moses when he took his people out of Egypt and went into the desert. This is the books of Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. They established the priesthood. Moses got the commandments on Mount Sinai, um, and that lasted from about 1500 to 1400 BC. From there, you get the time of the judges. So the Israelites go into the promised land with Joshua. Um, they essentially are there. It's about 200-year time period of judges where they have judges to settle disputes amongst the Israelites because God was enough. They had the priests. They didn't want a king. They just had judges. And the books here are Judges, obviously, Joshua, and the book of Ruth. Around 1150 BC, they decided they want a king. There was a prophet at the time named Samuel. He anointed Saul the king. This lasted roughly 100 years, and this is the first book of Samuel. So the first book of Samuel is when Israel got its first king, King Saul. Second book of Samuel is when they got their second king, King David. This is the David that fought Goliath and the David that reigned over Israel. He wrote the book of Psalms, and that time period is about 1050 to 1000 BC, roughly. Around 1000, Solomon comes in. So you go from King David to King Solomon. This is the first book of Kings. Lasted about 100 years. Afterwards, the kingdom split. There was a dispute between two kings named Jeroboam and Rehoboam. 10 tribes went north, and then the tribes of Judah and Benjamin went south. They took the Levites with them, and they were considered the Jews. And then the other tribe, they just considered themselves Israel. So you had Judah and the nation of Israel, and they had separated towards the end of First Kings, I believe. In the time of Solomon, he wrote Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Song of Solomon. So those books are all in that like 1000 to 900 BC period. Next, after the tribes split, you have like I said, the tribes of Israel and then Judah. This is about a 300-year period, ballpark. We'll say 200 before one of them goes into captivity, but 900 BC to roughly 600 BC, you get the books of Second Kings, talking about all the kings that were in place when the nation split. And then this is where we start seeing some of the prophets. So Joel, Jonah, Amos, Hosea, Micah, Isaiah, roughly between 900 and 600 BC. And they were prophesying to the nation of Judah, the nation of Israel, telling them, hey, stop acting crazy, go back to the law, or you guys are going to end up in captivity. Around 720. Oh, real quick, the books of Chronicles, First and Second Chronicles. So First Chronicles is basically lineage from creation to David. Second Chronicles is lineage from David to King Nebuchadnezzar, essentially, and that just lays out the timeline of the Israelites. So from there, Israel goes into captivity in Assyria around 720 BC. From here, you get the books of Nahum, Zephaniah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and Habakkuk. And most of them are saying to Judah, hey, Judah, look what just happened to Israel. They went into Assyria. You guys need to stop acting stupid or you're going to end up in captivity too. They didn't listen. Around 600 BC, King Nebuchadnezzar takes Judah into captivity. That happened about 600 to 550 BC is when the Babylonian captivity happened. And that's when you see the books of Daniel and the books of Obadiah. So if you remember, in the book of Daniel, he was in Babylon with King Nebuchadnezzar. Around 540 BC, the Persian Empire came in, and took the reins from Nebuchadnezzar. They basically took over Babylon. And the Persian Empire lasted from like 540 to 400 BC, roughly. During that time, you get the books of Haggai, Zechariah, Ezra, Esther, Nehemiah, and Malachi. That's when you see like Kings Cyrus, Darius, Xerxes, Artaxerxes. This is when they're talking about rebuilding the temple. So that's kind of that time period, 540 to 400 BC. From 400 BC to zero, there's nothing in the Bible per se. Some Bibles, older King James Bibles, have what happens during that time period. And then there's Jewish history about it as well. But essentially, it's the time where you get Alexander the Great takes over Persia. This is where you see the Roman Republic get started. Roman Republic was about 150 BC, but Alexander the Great, you see Greece. This is when you see the Spartans, the 300 Spartans of Thermopylae. The Great Wall of China was built. A little before this, you get like Socrates, Aristotle, Plato. That's again 400 BC, around that time period. But at that time, there was a family called the Maccabees, which essentially stood up against the governments and said, hey, we're not going to assimilate with you guys. We're going to maintain the laws that were given to Moses on Mount Sinai. Those guys signed a treaty, essentially. So they fought a bunch of wars, and they were not conquered, and they signed a treaty with the Roman Empire around 150 BC, and they established the first Sanhedrin. So 150 years later, at the time of Christ, when the Sanhedrin has its own political bubble for the Jews underneath the Roman Empire, that was a product of what the Maccabees did in the treaties that they established about 150 years before that. So that was just a side note. Sorry, back to the books of the Bible. So the entire New Testament is Christ's life, which was 33 years, and writings that took place shortly after that, roughly 80 years of history. So it's a proportionally in history, it's a small amount, but that's what the New Testament is. The entire New Testament, basically 0 to 80 AD. So conceptually, if you think about it, if you had a 50-page book, 49 pages are the Old Testament and 1 page is the New Testament. So it really is a pretty interesting thing. But that's all I got for today. Appreciate you guys. If there was anything I missed or got wrong, or if you have any questions, just let me know in the comments, and thank you for your time.